everyone, welcome back to LewisFiction and welcome to the final chapter of the Spider-Man cinematic universe and the final installment in the Spider-Man trilogy. Make sure to subscribe for more Spider-Man stories uploading every Thursday and Sunday, and with that out of the way, let's get into this. I bring you Spider-Man 3. We kick off the third installment in the Spider-Man franchise in the cinematic universe with Norman Osborn. This film will be a convergence for both Norman and Peter's characters, and just like the second film, this will feature them both as the main characters. Norman, after the last film, will be thinking of a way to get rid of Spider-Man. Craven wasn't the answer, but he still needs him out of the picture. But just like we alluded to in Spider-Man 2, Norman is way in over his head, and he has started to become consumed with the power struggle that Spider-Man has created with him. He has an ego and can't accept that Spider-Man is by far the better and stronger opponent. Therefore, he will think that if he is going to beat Spider-Man and regain his pride, he will have to do it himself. The first couple of scenes, we will get introduced to the Green Goblin armor for the first time. However, it will be different. Not like how we've seen it before, but rather more in line with the new Ultimate Spider-Man Green Goblin armor. This isn't going to be your typical Green Goblin story, but something just as sinister. As we catch back up with Peter after Norman's inciting incident, we are reintroduced to Peter and Cindy and their friendship. It's stronger than ever after Peter revealed to Cindy in the last film that he was Spider-Man. Cindy will ask many questions as to how he got his powers and how his powers work, and this will slowly but comically become rather annoying for Peter. Cindy will say that she's just excited. Her best friend is a superhero. We will then cut to a montage of Peter and Cindy working together at the Daily Bugle as they got the jobs there at the last film. Cindy will write stories about Spider-Man and Peter will snap photos of himself in the costume. There will be a real camaraderie there and we'll get to see how much fun they have together. They will start spending more time with each other as well, almost every single day. It is then revealed that Aunt May and Peter have finally moved out of Anna Watson's and they have finally moved into an apartment on their own 2 feet, with the money that May is bringing in from Feast and the money that Peter is making at the Daily Bugle. Peter and Cindy will start spending every night almost at Peter's apartment, coming up with new story ideas and where they can snap more pictures of Spider-Man. Everything seems to be going right in life for both of them. We'll have a little narration from Peter during this time, kind of recapping these events and the montage that just passed. Also talking about how his relationship with Cindy is almost maybe taking a different direction. Peter's feelings seem confused, but this will be something that comes back around later in the film. Towards the end of the montage, we will get a scene where Cindy and Peter fall asleep, staying up all night, coming up with new ways to spin stories on Spider-Man. Cindy has her head leant on Peter's shoulder. Cindy wakes up rather startled. She looks over at Peter and realizes what time it is. She gets up and looks back towards Peter and smiles before she leaves his apartment. We then follow Cindy home that night, as she returns back to her apartment in New York. The last few films haven't explored Cindy in a lot of detail other than being Peter's best friend. However, this film will finally start to dive more into her as a character. There will be a short scene where it is revealed that Cindy only lives with her mother, and her father isn't about anymore. This will be later revealed that her father is the man known as Albert Moon, Norman Osborn's rival, and the antagonist of the Osborn film. It's left open-ended as to why their relationship deteriorated, but we get the understanding from this scene that they're not on speaking terms. We also maybe slightly get the sense that Cindy kinda feels lonely. After her father left, she was only left with her mother. She has craved some form of attachment ever since, which is why she was so frustrated when Peter started pushing her away during the last film. All of this is left up in the air, but is set to be resolved during the final stages later on. We will then cut to a few scenes following Aunt May into Feast, showing us her new workplace and how everything works. This is when we are introduced to another main player in this film, Martin Lee. However, this version of Martin Lee will be different to all the rest that we have seen before in Spider-Man media. Yes, he will own Feast, and in fact Feast will be more like a chain of feasts rather than just the one shelter, but Martin Lee will be a businessman and will be a wealthy one at that in New York. This scene with May will reveal to the audience that Lee is in fact also running for mayor alongside Norman Osborn in the re-election. Lee is a confident and collected man, someone who bursts with charisma similar to Norman Osborn. He almost seems like a perfect fit to go up against him. We then cut back to Midtown High. Peter and Cindy are in school together. They get a notification that something is going down just outside of Chinatown, and it looks like a job for Spider-Man. Peter goes and Cindy covers for him as she starts to do more research on the case during the middle of the lesson. Peter swings through the city as we get our big first action set piece of the film. He arrives on the scene to a burning building. Peter tries his best to save everyone that he can, however, there is one person that he can't save. Peter is burnt and bruised, and it looks like all hope is lost. It looks like Spider-Man might actually be defeated, which is when a man on a glider swoops into the building, and then in a sudden flash, and what felt like a split second, he burst from the window with one person that was still trapped inside. Stood dramatically among the skies, the man was known to the public heroically as the Green Goblin in bright green and purple armor. The Goblin will say not to worry, the Green Goblin has everyone covered. Spider-Man is utterly confused by this. Who is this guy? And then he tries to confront the man, but the Goblin ignores him. The Goblin soaks up the appreciation from the police and the public, showing his appreciation for their support. When Spider-Man approaches him again, trying to ask, "Who the hell are you?" the Goblin shrugs him off and tells him to watch his back. He's not authorized to be on these streets. And after this dramatic introduction, we hard cut to a new segment. Peter and Cindy are sat on Peter's bed watching the news. Mayor Norman Osborn has just yesterday approved and signed off a new state law which allows only registered vigilantes to work alongside the police and US military to take forceful action against criminals in New York City. Taking a lot of inspiration from the Accords in the Civil War story, this is my version of it. However, instead of putting Iron Man against Captain America, I am putting Spider-Man against a Jonathan Hickman Ultimate Spider-Man inspired version of the Green Goblin. The Goblin will be the new hero on the block, adhering to the Accords while Spider-Man won't. It will also be revealed that the identity of the vigilantes that register has to be public knowledge, as Norman Osborn will then and there out himself as the Green Goblin, the man who saved the people in the fire yesterday. He will go on to tell the media that he is what the city needs, not Spider-Man. As Norman's intentions become very, very clear. He created the Green Goblin to push Spider-Man out the picture completely. If you can't beat him, just do it better than him, is the mentality that Osborn will have. Peter will say this is it. He's screwed. He's got the mayor of New York City against him. And then Cindy will comfort him, saying that maybe he just has to get on Osborn's good side. Peter asks how the hell is he going to do that? Osborn clearly hates him and is out to get him. Cindy will say that she doesn't know, but from what she's heard of Norman Osborn, he's not actually a bad guy. This will be then when Cindy reveals to Peter what her father did to Norman Osborn during the events of the Osborn film. Cindy will explain that she had to grow up with a narcissistic father. She will tell Peter that Norman will probably relate to him on that level if he just spoke through it with him. Peter will say maybe she's right. After all, Osborn has no ill intent. I guess he's just another superhero. This is when we cut to a scene with Spider-Man approaching Norman Osborn in the mayor's office. He climbs through the window and Norman will say that he's wondered when they'd have this interaction. Spider-Man will say that they need to talk about this Accords thing. Norman will say, I don't think we do. Norman will go on to explain why he put it in place, and his major distaste for the way that Spider-Man does things. Spider-Man will realise he's getting nowhere, and will tell Norman that he just won't stop being Spider-Man for some stupid Accords. If someone's in danger, he won't stop because some ridiculous law says he can't intervene. If someone is in danger, if someone is hurt, Spider-Man will get involved. It's his responsibility. Norman will say intervene as your registered government identity, and then they'll talk. But Peter can't do that. A massive wave of doubt comes over Peter. Why does he keep this identity? Is Norman Osborn right? Will keeping this identity a secret do more harm than good? Won't he be able to be Spider-Man anymore? What matters more, his identity or the responsibility to save others? But Peter knows why he has the identity. He thinks back to Aunt May and Uncle Ben. But he told Cindy. He told Cindy he's Spider-Man. Would it be really that bad if the whole world knew? Peter contemplates with himself as he leaves Norman's office, web-swinging away. We start to see a dramatic shift towards the Green Goblin over Spider-Man as we cut to the Daily Bugle. Cindy and Peter are called into their boss's office, J. Jonah Jameson, who says sales have been good because of their hard work on Spider-Man, but Green Goblin is all the rave now. We also get a slight inkling that Jonah prefers the Goblin politically and is more on the side of the Accords and feels more passionately about their identities being revealed. Jonah forces Peter and Cindy to move their work over towards the Goblin, which really adds a dampener onto their work, as it seems the Daily Bugle is more of a pro-Norman Osborn news source. They will think to themselves, well, what will they do? They can't create the same type of content on the Goblin as they do on Spider-Man. This then becomes a running problem and another thing that goes against Peter for the rest of the film. We will then skip forward slightly to a re-election debate between Norman and Lee. Norman Osborn will be cocky and confident, and his new Green Goblin persona will be a massive hit. He even swoops down to the debate on his Goblin glider, very much Iron Man style. The Goblin will have all the public praise, especially since the Daily Bugle have started to sway more towards the Goblin as well. However, Norman Osborn will completely underestimate Martin Lee. Lee comes out the blocks firing during the debate, bringing up political and social issues that Norman hasn't even bothered to fix around the city yet, and the audience start to switch sides. Osborn's ego and misjudgment is on full show here, and he's caught off guard. He was too obsessed with the power, he was too obsessed with his goal towards Spider-Man. And once again, just like the last film, Norman Osborn is losing. He's losing in another aspect of his life. He feels the same feeling he felt just a few months prior. We will then cut to a scene with Norman contemplating in his office, face to face with the Green Goblin armor. His attention away from Spider-Man slightly, and more onto the election. If he doesn't win this, everything else, all his power, goes out the window. He could just take him out, he will think to himself. No, he can't do that. He's a superhero. He's a man of the people. But for the greater good. The disappearance of Martin Lee would mean that the city would continue to have the almighty Green Goblin as their mayor. Norman starts to delusionally talk himself into this line of thinking before he sets out on his target. Martin Lee will die tonight. For the greater good. We then cut to a scene with Lee celebrating with what felt like a win on his part. He feels like the city is now on his side. He feels like the election is in his hands. He will be in his penthouse apartment suite he has in New York, pouring himself a whiskey. And then in the very backdrop of the New York City skyline, a man upon a glider will appear. He will smash through the window, catching Lee off guard, grabbing him by the throat, laughing as he does it. Lee will ask Osborn what is he doing, and Osborn will tell him that he needs to go. Norman kills Lee in his apartment and glides off into the night as if nothing happened. The next day, Peter wakes up and has some breakfast with Aunt May. They will catch up with each other and they will have a nice scene, saying how happy it is that they're living back together by themselves again. There is a big connection between these two characters, and it's stronger than ever. However, whilst having breakfast, the news will be on in the background, when it will reveal the death of Martin Lee. Mayor Norman Osborn will be first to comment, saying it's a tragedy. It will cut back to forensics in Lee's apartment when Norman narrates over the top, saying none other than Spider-Man is the main suspect for his death. Motive is unknown, but they recovered some of his webbing at the scene of the crime. Peter spits out his cereal as he heads to his bedroom and calls Cindy immediately. Cindy picks up and they discuss the news. Spider-Man is now wanted by the police, but more frighteningly, the Green Goblin. On the Goblin side of things, it's revealed that Norman took some of Spider-Man's webbing from the time that he visited him at his office and kept it safe from dissolving. He then placed it at the scene of the crime before he left Lee's apartment, framing Spider-Man for the murder. Norman is on the cusp of getting what he wants, and this will be the point where we are entering the final stages of the film. Norman will give in to his sadistic and ego-driven thoughts for power and greed, and will feel the need to finish Spider-Man off as quickly as humanly possible. Major news sources are against him, the public are against him, the Accords are against him, the police are against him. Now is the best time to finish him off while he has the chance. Osborn will think back to what Peter said when they met. If there's someone in danger, he won't hesitate to help them. And that's when Osborn enacts his final plan. Stage a crime, stage something that Spider-Man couldn't resist. Meanwhile, on the Peter side of things, Peter and Cindy will be discussing how all of this conveniently lines up with what Osborn wants. They will conclude that all of this was Osborn's doing, and it's all aroused to take Spider-Man out completely. Peter will say maybe Norman isn't the man you thought he was. Cindy will say that not many people in her life are who they appear to be. This will then turn into a nice moment where Cindy will reveal how much it meant to her when Peter revealed his identity to her finally. Peter and Cindy will smile at each other as tension rises. However, it will be quickly broken when Peter goes back into panic mode. He will think back to earlier. What if he just reveals his identity? Cindy will instinctively tell him that's a really bad idea. Not only will he put people in danger, it will go against everything he's been fighting for. Don't do it. It's what Norman wants. But Peter will insist, saying that it'll be a move that Norman won't expect. It'll catch Norman Osborn off guard, and if his identity comes out, the public will finally see him for who he truly is. Not a killer, just a kid. Cindy will tell him that's the worst idea ever. He's already wanted for murder. The mask is the only thing keeping him from not being in prison. Peter says he has an alibi though, and he'd be able to get out of it. Peter will say the way to beat the Goblin is at his own game. Cindy will disagree. Peter will leave out the window, and Cindy will try and stop him. She will rush out of his apartment and follow him to where he arrives. We will cut to a scene where Spider-Man will land at Times Square and will start to accumulate an audience around him. People will throw things at him and boo him, but Spider-Man will say that he has something to tell them. He will say how he's not done any of the things he's been accused of. He's only wanted to do good. But if he is to level with Norman Osborn, he has to play his game. As people filmed and streamed around him, amounting all sorts of viewers over social media, Cindy will be running to the scene telling him to stop. But before Peter could pull the mask up from his face, an explosion can be heard in the distance. Peter leaves his mask down as he approaches a fighting stance. This catches Cindy's attention and the public's attention also. Spider-Man leaps up and swings towards the scene, 2 blocks away. When Spider-Man lands on the scene, it's a bunch of random people dressed in military-grade armor shooting rocket launchers at random buildings. Peter will be utterly confused as to why they are doing this. But that's not the point. People are screaming, people are hurt, Spider-Man can't help himself. He starts taking out the guards one by one, but no one seems to be putting up a fight. And that's when his spider sense goes off. Of course. It was a trap. The Green Goblin swoops down on his glider and tackles Spider-Man, taking him out. Peter collapses to the floor and stands up hesitantly, realizing that the Goblin had caught him with his blade, as blood starts seeping from his side. Peter coughs as the Goblin says, "This is his end." Peter and the Goblin fight hand to hand. The enhanced exosuit of the Green Goblin helps Norman's attempts to hurt Peter. They fight and the Goblin gets the upper hand, beating down on Spider-Man. The crowd from Times Square suddenly forms around the fight, including Cindy Moon. The Goblin batters down on Peter, knocking him unconscious. The Goblin picks him up by his throat and holds him up for everyone to see. He says Spider-Man has finally been defeated. This is the end of Spider-Man, the murderer that he is. The Goblin throws him to the ground in front of the crowd. Cindy, in a panic, rushes over to Spider-Man's aid as the Goblin laughs and watches on. Cindy quietly chants his name to get up. She'll start to cry, teary-eyed, telling Peter he needs to get up. He's got to get up. The Goblin's footsteps start to approach Cindy from behind as she says she loves him in the wave of pure emotion. She says she loves him so much, he has to get up. She begs for him to get up. The Goblin comes over and crouches down next to Cindy, who cries over Peter's limp body. The Goblin says it's okay, as he places his hand on Cindy's head patronizingly. Cindy is shoved aside as the Goblin looks at his trophy, defeated. But a slight gap forms in Peter's eye, and when the Goblin turns his back to gloat in front of the ever-growing crowd, Spider-Man jolts up, kicking the Goblin in the face. Peter holds his side as he webs it up, waiting for the Goblin's next attack. As the Goblin's rage evolves into his fighting style, Peter, slightly limited to what he could do due to his injury, calculates his every move, sort of representing the game of chess that him and Norman have been playing for the past 2 films. Peter dodges, moves, and punches in all the right places, until finally, he beats the Green Goblin, and everything is finally over. After the dust is settled, we cut to the aftermath. After the web from the crime scene was analysed further, it was found out that it was older than the incident and the death of Martin Lee, which means that Spider-Man could have never killed him. Spider-Man is in the clear. The murder is then placed on the shoulders of Norman Osborn, as Norman had no alibi. No alibi could be found for the man that would be charged for the murder, and he is found guilty, stripped of his mayor duties, and sent down for good. Peter won. He didn't reveal his identity, but he came pretty close to. He didn't have to play Norman's game. All he had to do is keep believing in himself when all the odds were stacked against him. We then get a rather comedic scene where Peter and Cindy visit J. Jonah Jameson at the Daily Bugle, bringing him photos and new stories revolving around Spider-Man. Jameson, still clearly bitter about the Goblin's arrest, starts to resent Spider-Man for this reason, and in this universe, this will be the origin reasoning as to why J. Jonah Jameson goes on to hate Spider-Man. Cindy and Peter will leave his office and will have an awkward moment with each other. Cindy will tell Peter how she leant over his body thinking he was dead. She will tell him that she's been wanting to tell him something for a while now, and it's been at the back of her mind, but seeing him almost die made it real for her. Peter asks, "What is that?" And Cindy will just kiss him. Peter's eyes will widen, and he will kiss her back. They both won't know what to say, as we fade out, ending our film and our trilogy right there. Thank you for watching the third installment and, at the moment, the final part in this Spider-Man cinematic universe. Let me know in the comments down below if you want to see more parts in this Spider-Man cinematic universe. At the moment, there aren't plans for any more movies, but this was generally just the first rounding out, I guess you could say, of the first phase of the cinematic universe, rounding off the stories with Norman, rounding off Peter's story, Cindy's story, and everyone's stories. This is it for now, but let me know in the comments down below, like I said, if you want to see more. Make sure to subscribe for more fanfictions uploading every Thursday and every Sunday, and I will see you this Sunday for the Spectacular Spider-Man Part 3 of the College Trilogy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Take care, and peace.